not from the canola oil or the cottonseed oil, because that doesn't have DNA, but from the corn on the cob, the corn chips, the other soy products that contain the DNA. So this is very serious. It also is possible that the genes might transfer to our own DNA, wreaking havoc in our own cells. Now, I want to run through GM soy as well. We've pounded on the BT. Let's take a look at the soy problems. Soon after GM soy was introduced to the UK, soy allergies skyrocketed by 50%. No follow-up study was done. In a small study with skin prick tests, they found one person had a positive reaction to GM soy, but not to non-GM soy, suggesting a unique allergenic profile. Actually, there are many reasons why GM soy might be more allergenic. First of all, it has more herbicide residues. They may cause problems. Second, there's a known allergen in soy called trypsin inhibitor, where in Monsanto's own study, conveniently left out of the publication but discovered later, in cooked GM soy, it was as much as 7 times higher than non-GM soy. In another study, they fed GM soy to mice, and the enzymes in the pancreas were suppressed by as much as 77%. Now, if your protein-digesting enzymes are not functioning properly, you leave more time in the digestive system for protein to hang out and cause trouble and cause allergic reactions. So eating genetically engineered soy might increase allergic reactions to a wide variety of foods. In addition, they looked inside the GM soy and they found a new protein that was never intended, probably the result of the massive collateral damage that occurs during the process of creating the GM. And this protein was able to bind with IgE antibodies, meaning it was probably an allergen, or possibly an allergen. And as I mentioned, the protein itself, the Roundup Ready protein, has properties of a dust mite allergen. So it itself might be an allergen, and it may be continuously produced inside of us if the gene transfers. So all of those are reasons why GM soy might be increasing allergies to soy or other problems, or other allergies. Now, when mice and rabbits were fed Roundup Ready soy, they had altered cells, enzymes, or gene expression in livers, kidneys, pancreases, and hearts. Here's mice livers. That's the nuclei. You'll see on the right, the membrane around the nuclei is more rough, not as smooth. Inside the nuclei is the nucleoli. You'll see differences there as well in the GM-fed group on the right. Rat livers on the right also show clear differences in the tissues compared to the controls that ate non-GM soy. Rats that ate GM soy, the testicles changed color. The cells changed color. For mice that were fed GM soy, there was damage and changes in the young sperm cells. Then they looked at the young embryos from those mice, and they found that there was a temporary decrease in gene expression in the embryos when the parents were fed GM soy compared to when they were fed non-GM soy. Now these rats, this picture was given to me by Dr. Irina Ermakova, a senior scientist at the Russian National Academy of Sciences. She and I were a member of a panel that presented at the EU Parliament last year. So these rats are Russian-speaking rats. And they volunteered for a soy-eating experiment. And they were fed GM soy starting 2 weeks before they conceived, and more than half of their offspring died within 3 weeks. Compared to about 1 in 10 for the mothers that were fed non-GM soy. Here's a picture of 1 day's death rate. You'll notice that the GM soy group was smaller. They also had a different look to them. Notice the GM soy group on the bottom. Here's a comparison of 2 rats the same age, 19 days. The smaller one is from the GM group. They tried to mate the offspring of the GM group, but they could not conceive. Now, this is preliminary evidence. It was reported in a conference in October 2005, and Dr. Ermakova basically said, "This is astounding research. I've repeated it 3 times. I have frozen my samples of tissues. I have no more money. Please repeat the study. Please offer monies for us so we can evaluate it to see if GM soy is causing these problems. Well, as you probably guessed, it has never been repeated. She's been vilified. She's been taken off of any GM research. In fact, she told me while we had lunch at the European Parliament building, she said one of her colleagues tried to console her because she had been pressured by her director, who was pressured by his director, so they couldn't do any more GM research. So the colleague consoled her and said, well, maybe the GM soy will solve the overpopulation problem. Now, in the attacks on her, there is one valid point that I have to bring up that's very clear. It was a mistake in the study, I think, and that is that she never did a biochemical analysis of the feed. Because it's possible that there might have been some toxins in the soy flour that she used that was the cause of these astounding results. Now, after doing it 3 times with the same feed, an interesting coincidence happened. The feed that they were using as the rat chow for all the rats in the facility changed to be GM soy based. So she couldn't do any more studies because she had no more controls. But after 2 months of all of the rats eating GM soy, she asked her colleagues, what is the mortality rate of the rats you're using in your experiment? It had skyrocketed to over 55%, suggesting that it is not a particular toxin in her batch, but that it is a generic problem that might be affecting the human population. Now, if GM crops are so bad, why don't we see more problems? We can take a lesson from L-tryptophan. L-tryptophan, produced by genetically engineered bacteria in the 1980s, was responsible for a deadly epidemic that killed about 100 Americans and caused 5,000 to 10,000 to fall sick. Only the brand that was genetically engineered was responsible for the deadly epidemic. It took about 4 years for them to identify that there was even an epidemic taking place, and they almost missed it. The only reason they found it was because the disease had 3 simultaneous characteristics. The first was that it was new symptoms. It stood out. Completely new disease. The second was that the symptoms were acute, forcing people to go to hospitals and to doctors. And the doctors said it was the worst pain they had ever seen in their careers. And third, it came on quickly. Now, what if all 3 characteristics had not been in place? What if it was not new? What if it was heart disease or diabetes or cancer or autism? It would still be on the market. What if it was not acute? What if it was frequent colds or memory loss? Or memory loss? It might still be on the market. What if it didn't come on quickly? What if it took 20 years to show up? What if it took the next generation? So it begs the question, what about GM foods on the market? Might they be creating an epidemic today that's going unnoticed, that might not have all 3 characteristics? Might it be responsible for the doubling of food-related illnesses in the United States between 1994 and 2001? Or all the horrendous statistics we're seeing worse in the United States and Canada than overseas? We don't know because there's no post-marketing surveillance. The Canadian FDA, Health Canada, said, we're going to look at the health of Canadians and see if GMOs are positively or are negatively affecting them. This was in 2002. By 2003, they gave up, saying it's too difficult. There's no human clinical trials, no proper evaluation of all those potential changes. Approvals are based on assumptions which are largely disproved or untested. Or they're based on industry-funded studies, which are designed so poorly these guys have bad science down to a science. I'd like you to rate yourself from 1 to 100. How vigilant you'll be next week.